Hello, I'm Terry David Mulligan, and welcome to the Mulligan's 2 podcast. When we first started this series, it was called Mulligan's 2 podcast, Music, Film, Food, and Wine. For the most part, it's been music. There's been some film there. There's more film coming, actually. And the Critics' Choice Awards were supposed to be the podcast this weekend, but they have been delayed in Los Angeles for 2 weeks because, of course, of the fires and the climate change happening in our world. And so we're going to hold on to that. But then I got a not exactly flowery press release because it wasn't meant to be. It was just good news. The headline said, BC wine industry celebrates Alberta, BC direct-to-consumer wine program. The larger story is that the BC wine business has been in tough shape, in part also because of climate crisis. 2 deep freezes that literally decimated about a quarter of the vineyards in British Columbia, mostly the Okanagan. And they're holding on by their fingernails. They really are. And so they are making wines this winter with fruit allocated from Washington, Oregon, California, Ontario. And as long as it's written on the crafted in BC, and it's transparent, there's going to be some wine to be had from British Columbia. But then they all got notices saying, from the Alberta government saying, yeah, we don't like the way you're selling to our province, and we're basically going to take you off the shelves. It was just a horrible hook. And so finally, this press release comes out this week. This week, the BC wine industry welcomes the official launch of the Alberta Gaming Liquor Direct-to-Consumer Program, an interprovincial agreement between Alberta and BC allowing wineries to sell their products directly to Alberta consumers. It goes on, but that's it in a nutshell. And so, to explain it to myself and to you and to wine fans all across the country, especially in Alberta, we got a hold of Laura Kittmer from Wine Growers BC, and she suggested I have a conversation with the board chair of Wine Growers of BC, Paul Saywer, who is in charge of sales and marketing at Dirty Laundry Winery in Summerland. Here's our conversation. I hope it makes sense to you, and I hope you're a wine fan in Alberta or in the wine business or support the wine business in British Columbia, because it's a win-win for both sides. My name is Terry David Mulligan. This is Tasting Room Radio. There are news things happening, friends, as we talk. News is breaking about our relationship with our friends in Alberta, the wine consumers and the governments. In order to understand what's going on and the press release, we're going to talk to the chair of the Wine Growers Association of British Columbia, Paul Sawler, from Dirty Laundry. Welcome aboard.
Thanks, Terry. Great to be here.
It's a kind of a busy time for you. I mean, just being in the wine business, it's kind of crazy.
It has been a crazy couple of years from the 2022 frost in December to the 2024 frost in January. It's devastated the Okanagan in terms of grape production. So this is a little bit of welcome good news and kind of a light at the end of the tunnel, and something that we've been working at for probably 10 years.
What's changed about our relationship with Alberta over the last couple of months?
As you may or may not know, I think on January 22nd of last year, wineries who were selling direct to consumers from BC wineries to Alberta were issued a notice from the Alberta government that you would have to make a choice, either sell direct to consumer, or if you do that, you will lose your ability to sell into their wholesale market, which they do control.
Exactly.
So a lot of wineries had to make some very difficult decisions in January of last year of whether they wanted to stay with the direct-to-consumer channel or the wholesale channel they built up. So a lot of wineries at that point decided to stop selling direct-to-consumer. A few decided to stop selling wholesale.
Yeah.
So it wasn't until June of last year when Premier Eby and Premier Smith got together, I think, put aside, philosophical differences and political differences, and I believe came up with the the right solution for both Alberta consumers and the BC wineries.
At the time that it went down in 2024, it was a dark time for BC wine.
Here,
It was the worst possible timing, and I said on the air to my Alberta listeners, what are they thinking about? It's a time to reach out and help across the border, and because they're farmers just like you are. You know, this is not a flashy industry here so much as it's a farming community. It's communities. And you in Alberta can recognize a farming community. You know what it looks like. You know what it feels like. So to then throw this down and say, well, we're going to stop your sales. We're going to take you off the shelves in Alberta. That was a crushing blow. It was hard.
it absolutely was, because I believe it came about a week after the frost,
Yeah.
when we figured that, this was 2024 was going to be a write-off year in the Okanagan for grapes. And to have that piled on, it was, yeah, challenging, I would say, would be a good
Oh,
word.
that's a
But,
kind of, that's
a
a
kick in the
kind
gut
word,
would be
Paul.
another word,
Yeah.
or another phrase that you could use. But it was dark times at that point.
So as of now, BC wineries can ship direct to consumer in Alberta.
That is correct. They have to go through a process.
Yeah.
Wineries have to register with the AGLC, uh, sign an agreement that we will, collect the Alberta administration charge,
Which is what
which is fair,
which
which
is
is we've
what they
looked at that for years.
you offered that time and time again. You said we'll pick up the taxes and send them to you.
We would, but until January 6th of this year, we had no way of collecting nor remitting. So now that is in place, and it's a level playing field for retailers in Alberta versus the direct to wineries. Everybody is paying the same fee to have wine go into the province, and most of our consumers are quite happy with that.
So for the wine fan, wine consumers, and people who follow this story in BC and Alberta, it's an important step in interprovincial trade between BC and Alberta. Um, Alberta is a huge market for BC wine, and
Absolutely, it is. It's probably, we were looking at it this morning, somewhere between 15 and 18% of our total wine production goes into Alberta. That is a significant market.
sure. And what's the next step then? Just our relationships.
Well, they've announced that this is a pilot project, and they're going to run it for a year. In direct discussions that we've had with the Alberta government, that's not the gist, and that's not the goal. They want to see how the program's going to run, and they want to see if they have to make some tweaks to it in the coming years. But my view is that it's here to stay. So long as BC wineries play by the rules and remit what they're supposed to remit, Alberta will be happy. We will be happy.
What's your most popular wine currently?
Dirty Laundry, it's our Hush Rosé,
Hush Rosé. What does it go for on the shelf here in BC?
right around the $20 mark.
Okay, and with the taxes and ads and the recycling, etc., going on, what would it sell for on the shelf in Alberta?
Probably in the $25 range.
Okay,
But then again, when I say it's a $20 range here in British Columbia, you got to remember we add the provincial liquor tax after that,
of
and in
course.
Alberta, it's included in the price.
Okay, so it's comparable in both provinces.
Very, very close now, yes.
Now, tell me about your wine club. How many members do you know? Do you know numbers for Dirty Laundry?
Yes, somewhere in the 1,200 range.
There you go. But you can add to that now. You can ship direct.
We can,
You can
and
sell direct.
the biggest thing that wineries haven't been able to do in Alberta is market their wine clubs openly,
Ah,
and that now is not a problem anymore. So, you're starting to see wineries being very, well, not aggressive, but at least letting people know what they can get.
exactly that.
And it's not just big for the wineries. As you build these relationships with Alberta consumers, it also drives tourism. And our number one outside of BC market for visits to wineries are also Albertans.
Can I, by the way, I will say this, and I have said this every time I talk to them. There are a lot of Albertans owning and running BC wineries.
Yes, yes, there are.
Like a lot.
Yes. And I don't have to look very far, Terry, to know where that is
And,
with Dirty Laundry.
and you are
Not that it's all Albertans, but we do have Albertans that are part of our ownership team.
are you not an Albertan, sir?
I am an Albertan.
You're a registered Albertan?
I am speaking to you from just west of Calgary in the little hamlet of Redwood Meadows, close to
Wonderful,
Bright Creek.
wonderful, wonderful. Well, there. I mean, we are intrinsically entwined with them. It's as simple as that. We're not just next door neighbors. We've got a lot in
We
common.
are not. The thing that I think that is going to be important in this as well, I think that enough thought went into this that this could be used as a framework to fix interprovincial trade all across the country. We still can't legally ship direct to consumer in Ontario or Quebec or or British
That's
Columbia or not British or
yeah.
New Brunswick. I think Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Nova Scotia right now are the only ones that have totally open borders. And of course, BC has. BC is not just open to BC wineries; it's been open to Ontario wineries, and
Exactly.
BC has you know has taken a real lead on this, and you know, sure, we have a wine industry. So does Ontario. So does Quebec. So
Yeah.
does Nova Scotia. It shouldn't be so hard to sell wine in your own country.
No. I just got a note here. Hold on a second. We are the only wine producing nation in the world that does not consume principally its own domestic wines. And we got
That
to
is,
get
that
rid of
is
that.
true. Now, in fairness, I don't think we can produce enough wine right now
True.
to make that like it is in France or Italy. But the fact that we have to struggle to get it into markets that are inside our own country is
And
is
and
is
and the fact that we're being adhering to laws that were pre-prohibition and are still on the books and they're still unenforceable. They're not enforceable. They're legally anyway. That's a whole other thing.
yeah.
I
I
tried to
mean, there
get
was there was a very large question whether it was ever really illegal for a winery to ship into Alberta. The question was, the legislation is written as it's
to.
illegal to import wine, not to export wine.
He's the chair of the Wine Growers Association in British Columbia, Paul Sawler from Dirty Laundry. Things are changing, friends, in the BC wine business. I'm Terry David Mulligan, Tasting Room Radio. We've been doing this show for 17 years, and we've seen changes come and go, but this one's a big deal. This is the fact that we now have an agreement between BC and Alberta where BC wineries can now ship to your front door. Simple as that. For you Albertan wine fans out there, you know what I'm talking about. We've been hammering this for years and years and years. And finally, there's some sense being shown. Thanks for doing this, Paul. I know it's a busy time for you. For example, let me take it right down to the nuts and bolts. Your Dirty Laundry is very busy and makes great wines, and has lots of friends in Alberta. How does this affect you directly? What do you think, just as a winery?
Well, I think the biggest thing it's going to enable us to do, and as most people know, the most profitable channels for wineries in any case is something you're selling retail direct to consumer rather
Sure,
than going through wholesale
sure,
channels.
sure.
So, it's going to give Dirty Laundry the ability to really start to market the winery more so in Alberta than we've been able to do in the past, and you know, hopefully pick up some fans, pick up some people that we may have lost in the past. We see a tremendous growth opportunity in both traditional direct to consumer sales like e-commerce and with Wine Club.
And we're now shipping directly to all four Western provinces. That's the deal.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
and Nova Scotia. That's even better.
And Nova Scotia.
Wanted to ask you about the timing of this. Now, 2025, you and other wineries in British Columbia have had to find different source of fruit to fill bottles in 2025, and Washington seemed one of the best places to head for that. First of all, they've got our soil. Um,
Yes.
what did you do, for example, at Dirty Laundry? How did you handle that?
Well, for us, 2025 was an absolute devastation. Terry, we have 120 acres of our own vineyards, plus we license a bunch more. Out of our 120 acres of vineyards this year, we harvested about 750 pounds of
Hmm.
grapes, which is not enough to
That's
fill a
that's a dark
couple of
day.
cases.
That's a
You can't
dark
even you
day.
can't even fill a barrel. Uh, so yeah, we were forced to look outside. We were lucky. We found a single grower in Washington State uh, with very similar terroir, very similar farming practices. Our winemaker Mason Spink went down and spent some time with them, and we did contract grape purchases and juice purchases out of a single source in Washington State. So, and we've been very happy with the fruit. The terroir is very similar. It's like 400 kilometers from where we are.
Did it take you into different varietals?
We were really lucky. There was only one or two varietals that we produced that we couldn't get. We didn't bring in anything. Well, that's not entirely true. We brought in a couple of things that are a little bit different that I'm gonna hold off on, and we're gonna launch them properly. But in general, everything that we brought in are varietals that we've
Okay.
used in the past.
So,
Now, this will drag into probably a multi-year thing because, as you know, the whites that we bought this year and are producing now will be sold this year.
that's right. The time,
We've
as I
worked
say, the
really hard
time.
at Dirty Laundry over the past 7 or 8 years while I've been there, and Mason has been there to ensure we do not sell reds the year after we crush them. So it's a 2-year project at least for us to get the reds to market. So we'll be dealing with some replacement wines crafted in BC is
Crafted in
how we've
BC.
monitored them. Uh, uh, in 2025 and again in 2026. Our hope is that it's only reds that we'll be dealing with in 2026. But
Yeah.
until we see what happens this winter and what the vines actually produce in 2025, it's a little hard to make that judgment at this point.
We're having a very interesting winter here in Warmland on Vancouver Island.
Yes.
How about you guys up there? Is there any? What's the weather looking?
Well, it's been relatively mild, and the forecast for the next 2 weeks is mild. It is going below freezing at night, which is a positive thing. I think if you ask most winemakers, they would rather it be steady below zero for a little while, uh, because it gets up to 6 and 7 during the day. It can trick the vines into starting to
Yeah,
produce some sap, and we don't want that if there's potentially another incident this year. I think like every other winery, we're looking at the 2 week forecast and looking out and going, okay, it looks good. It looks good. I think most of us believe if we can get into February and the sun's a little higher, that we won't face that. And that's, Terry, as you know, this isn't the first time, even in back-to-back years, that this has happened. It happened back in the 80s as well.
sure.
Now it was a little different, a lot different industry back then, but it's not unprecedented, and we would like to see it go another 45 years before we see that again. Then neither you or I'll have to deal with it.
Listen, I can't keep you talking because you're far too busy. However, this is a plus and some bright news and what's been a very dark number of months. I don't want to go too far back on that, but basically there's been wineries change hands, families are disappearing. It's a crazy time in the farming community.
It is.
How does it affected you in the boardroom and the wine growers?
Well, it's we've had to be get creative in terms of you know where we're going to market, how we're going to market. We've had to get creative on working with the provincial government on some markup relief for these
Yep.
replacement wines because really if we were working under uh, the system for general imports, there would be no business case for us to be able to make wines and make them profitably to sell inside British Columbia without the province's help. And I can't stress enough how great they have been, how great the provincial government has been. Premier Eby, um, uh, Minister Farnworth, when he was in that position, uh, they really took their time to understand the challenge we were having and come up with some pretty creative solutions in a very short period of time. So I will give kudos to them. I'll give kudos to Premier Eby and Premier Smith for stepping, outside of their traditional territory or traditional roles and just making this happen because it's the right thing to do for Canada and British Columbia and Alberta.
I will make a note here that uh, there's nothing better than a great glass of wine, and the community and the farmers, and how it brings people together. The reason why I headed for Naramata for a number of years was because I like the community around winemaking. I like those people,
Yes.
and I like their sense of decency. But one thing, really, you stand back and look at it. we still put a lot of the wine industry still puts a lot of money in the coffers. There's a lot of taxes, a lot of sales. It's good for the economy. It's good for the BC and Alberta.
Yeah, I think there's some statistics out there that every bottle of British Columbia wine sold in BC generates almost $100 of net worth when it goes through the system. And like imported wines don't do that.
No,
That doesn't help our economy. It doesn't help our tourism. It doesn't help put money back into individual communities. And buying BC wine does. So it's not just good for the wineries, it's good for the whole economy. Our goal at Dirty Laundry is for somebody to pick up a bottle of Hush next year, and when they taste it, have said, "Oh, that's Dirty Laundry's wine."
there you go.
And and that's our goal. And Mason's goal is to be consistent and be true to how we make wine and what our customers like. And we're ready for the challenge this year. There's going to be a lot of work, a lot of education that has to be done with retailers and consumers.
Mason, speak for mayor. Absolutely, positively. Thank you for doing this. And what's your website so people can follow along?
Wine Growers is winebc.com,
Yep.
and Dirty Laundry is dirtylaundry.ca.
Thank you so much.
And by the way, Terry, just as a note, we've Dirty Laundry has after 20 years made a name change. We are now Dirty Laundry Winery, no longer Dirty Laundry Vineyard. So
You're still Dirty Laundry.
it's still Dirty Laundry,
Thank you.
absolutely. So
Paul Sawler, who is the chairman of the Wine Growers Association of British Columbia, and the man in charge at Dirty Laundry. Thank you so much for sitting in with us.
thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.